Hello and welcome back to the Warehouse Podcast, part of the Believe Podcast Network. My name is Tyler, and we are now a little bit more than a weekend into the Baltimore Orioles 2026 season. They're 2-2 so far. Some good, some bad, some things that we're really not going to get into because it's only 4 games. There's not a ton of sample size there that I think is worth dissecting too terribly much. I think we want to give it a little bit of time to breathe. I believe Eli is going to get on here later in the week and talk about some things he might be able to dig in a little bit deeper into. What do you think of the first trip through the rotation? What do you think about Kobe Mayo so far as the third baseman? Is the outfield defense going to be a problem long term? These are all questions that I think are worthy of further discussion, but not after just 4 games, and not while we still have some pretty interesting news to discuss that we haven't talked about here on the podcast yet. We are a couple days behind on this, but I think we'll talk about it anyway and spend, 15 or 20 minutes here with me as we dig through the Shane Baz news, which we got over the weekend that the Orioles and Shane Baz agreed to a contract extension that is going to keep him in Baltimore through the 2030 season, or at least under team control through 2030. Of course, there could be trades and things like that, but he is signed through 2030 now, which is essentially a 2-year extension. It's being billed as a 5-year extension because it starts now and it's new money, and he is going to see increased salaries basically immediately. Including signing bonuses and things like that. But it's really an extension of 2 years. He was going to hit free agency after the 2028 season with the Orioles. Now it will not be until the 2030 season. And, this is kind of, surprising news. The Orioles, we want them to we've talked about them signing a pitcher to a long-term extension. I think to me that sounded more like Trevor Rogers or Kyle Bradish. These guys that are a little bit more proven and experienced. And yes, there's been some health stuff with Bradish, but when he pitches, he's so good. And Rogers was just excellent last year. And maybe, even though he's gonna go, he's headed for free agency after this year. Maybe they can convince him like, you figured it out here. Let's get something done. Ultimately, it ends up being Boz is the guy that gets the deal first, and the contract breaks down like this. He's going to get a $1 million salary in 2026 and then a $4 million signing bonus. So making $5 million in 2026. Then he'll get $7 million next year, $10 million in 2028, and then $21 million in 2029, and $25 million in 2030. That works out to basically be a $13.6 million per year, like AAV, which, if Shane Baz is a competent, serviceable pitcher, $13.6 million per year for 5 years is perfectly fine. Chris Bassett this year is making $18.5 million. There's been the recent seasons where they've paid guys like Jordan Lyles, I think $8 million, and Kyle Gibson $10 million, and I think last year Charlie Morton and Tomoyuki Sagano got 12 to $15 million, somewhere in that range. So like a serviceable big league arm that you expect to pitch 150 innings, be a 4.5 ERA type guy, $13.6 million, perfectly fine. Now the caveat of all of this is, of course, Shane Baz wasn't going to be making $13.6 million this year. Probably wasn't even going to be making that next year. Maybe makes it in his final year of arbitration. That's when players start to get a little bit closer to their market value. If he stays healthy, if he performs, I could have seen in 2028 Shane Baz making probably maybe more than $13.6 million. Instead, the Orioles kind of give him a little bit money now, give him some assurances, and he sticks around on what could potentially be a team-friendly deal. If he pitches to the absolute top of his ability, which the Orioles obviously think he will, 13.6 million per year, even if it is backloaded to be 21 and 25 million in 2029 and 2030, are bargains. It's not a lot to pay, especially if next year, Rogers might leave, Boz becomes the number two. Now you're paying for a number two for 13.6, and then Bradish is in, whatever his second year of arbitration, making probably less than 13.6 million. Those are fine numbers. It's a gamble, and it's a gamble on both parts. I think it's probably a bigger gamble for the Baltimore Orioles than it is for Boz, because Boz is only in his age 27 season, signing a 5-year deal. He'll be able to go back on the market in his early 30s. And if he pitches really well, like the Orioles hope he will, like he hopes he will, he's going to get a massive contract at 32. We saw some of the older pitchers, if you go in at 32 instead of 30, they do tend to lose a little bit of that AAV. But at 32, I think you could still expect, if you're really good, to get another 5-year deal, a 4-year deal at, 20, $25 million a year. And who knows what the CBA is going to look like in 2030? Who knows what the market for starting pitchers is going to be at that point? Are they looking for guys to go 7 innings and allow 2 runs, or is it more like 5 innings and 2 runs? Like the market there could change a little bit. Rosters could get bigger. Maybe there's not as much pressure on starters. That could shift. You'd hope the Orioles have some sense of that and where it's going. You'd hope Shane Baz and his agent have some sense of that and where it's going. But the Orioles are taking, I think, the slightly bigger risk because they are giving this guy guaranteed money. In total, I think it's like 50 something new, or it's $64.5 million in new money that he's getting. That, if he blows out his arm tomorrow and can never pitch again, he's getting that $64.5 million. Now, the Orioles probably have insurance on him and maybe they recoup some of that. But I think you get my meaning with that is that there is inherent risk there on a guy that doesn't have a ton of track record. And this will belabor the point a little bit because I'm sure every other podcast has covered this, but Boz, he pitched a full season last year, 166 and a third innings. The year before that, 79 and a third. And besides that, has been injured and not really played. In his first start this year, I think a mixed bag of results, 5 and a third innings, allowed 4 runs on 7 hits, no walks, but 4 strikeouts and 1 hit by pitch. Mixed bag. The FIP was only 2.28, and he had that really just that one bad inning. And I think you don't allow home runs, you don't walk guys, you're going to have a pretty good time. But you would have liked him to see a few more strikeouts. But that's one start. I'm not going to dig too deep into that. But it is interesting to see Boz be the guy that the Orioles hitch their wagon to for now. And I think that's probably the more interesting thing to dig into is why Boz, why not someone else on the roster, and what does this tell us about the Orioles moving forward and their plans to pay people, and why do they pay certain people? They've now, they paid Boz, they paid Basayo, and then of course they gave Pete Alonso the big contract, which I think Alonso, I think you put in a separate bucket of established all-star, older. I think they understand the money financially is not going to make a ton of sense on the field at the end of that deal, but you needed to get somebody in with some legitimacy and to give you a veteran presence. And also in the short term, I think this year, next year, maybe even the year after, Pete Alonso is going to be an impact bat for the Baltimore Orioles. It's kind of that fourth year and fifth year, maybe even the second half of that third year, you're not so sure about. But I think you put him in a separate bucket from Basayo and Boz because they are both younger, pre-arbitration. Boz was, or Basayo was just starting his big league career. Boz just a couple years into it and had years of control to go. So the Orioles did not have to do this. So why were these the two guys they've decided to kind of give those long-term contracts to? I think, first it comes down to the willingness of the player to do it. I've talked about this on this podcast before. The factors that go into a player being willing or not willing to sign a contract. I think the agent is certainly one part of that, but the player is choosing the agent, right? So that has to go through their mind. When a player picks Scott Boras as their agent, I'm not saying they are unwilling to sign a free agency long-term deal with their team that they came up through the farm system with. But it is an indication that, hey, if I hit my ceiling, if I get close to it, I'm probably going to go on the open market, and I'm totally fine to re-sign with you, but the deal needs to be appropriate, not some sort of hometown discount because you're the one that, groomed me a little bit. There is definitely that's a decision there. And people talk about Westberg and Henderson and Holiday and Rutschman and why those guys haven't gotten extensions. I think of that crew at this point, I mean, who are you going to sign an extension to? Really just Henderson. I mean, Holiday has not been a great player just yet. Now injured right now. Westberg has had injuries constantly. Of course, he's good when he plays, but he's hurt all the time. Adley really good early, has struggled the last year and a half, off to a decent start right now. But it's really just Henderson who you're going to sign that to, and Henderson is a Boris client, a really good player who I think if you had to put money on it right now, I don't expect the Orioles to blow him away with some pre-free agency offer. I expect Gunnar Henderson to go to free agency. If for some reason the Orioles are bad in his contract year, he would get traded. Potentially they get a haul for him. But, I think right now the Orioles look like they should be a competitive team for the next couple of years. Gunnar will play out the string there and then go somewhere, and the Orioles will get a draft pick for him. That's what I expect Gunnar Henderson to have happen. The Orioles could surprise me and give him a big deal, but I don't know that that's my expectation at the moment. And as I said, the rest of the younger players, homegrown players, haven't really shown you that sustained ability yet that I think the Orioles were willing to cough up the money. Now, of course, let's talk about Baz and Basayo because it's not like they have some sort of record of sustained performance that you can lean on. Basayo had barely played in the major leagues and they gave him a deal, and then Baz has played in the majors but had injuries. And then while the stuff, everybody talks about the stuff, the results last year were not amazing. A 4.87 ERA, 4.37 FIP, a 1.333, I'm sorry, 1.335 WHIP, and an ERA plus of 85. He was worth zero point 0.5 B WAR last year. Certainly not a guy that to you, the 166 innings is serviceable. The 4.87 ERA is passable. I think you are okay with him being a fifth starter, but I don't think you view him as like a future cornerstone of your rotation that you are trying to sign long term. So that comes like the willingness of Baz, right? He has had injury stuff, um, and despite that, has worked his way back, understands that there is a potential that he could get re-injured. So if this new team, the Orioles, who from everything that seems to be known, the Orioles pitching development, at least at the big league level, is top notch. Why not say, hey, they're offering me some guaranteed money right now, life-altering money, millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars. I got a good feel for them in the spring. I like the people. Um, I like the facilities down there in Sarasota. I played with Tampa, so I'm familiar with Camden Yards and Baltimore to a degree. Um, let's get it done. I'm willing. I worry about maybe getting hurt again, but I want to leave open the door at the back to say I can hit free agency again while I'm relatively young and get an even bigger bag long term. I think that that's sort of a perfect recipe for someone that was open to an extension. Basayo, different situation, a young player, barely had a cup of coffee. I think got a decent signing bonus, maybe $1 million or so, but not enough to change the all overall trajectory of his life. Um, but the Orioles believing in him enough can say like, hey, we're going to give you tens of millions of dollars, play a lot, and whether it works out or not for you, you're set forever. I think that's a very attractive thing. And at the same time, he's very young and he can hit free agency again at a relatively young age. Probably not going to be a catcher at that point, but at least a DH first baseman. And if he hits again the way they expect him to, there's money to be made on the back end as well. So again, those are like two perfect situations that I think a lot of these other young players don't have. If you talk about Westberg, Henderson, Holiday, Cowser, even guys that, again, they the sustained success isn't there, but Basayo didn't have that either. These guys got beefier signing bonuses than Basayo got. In the case of Holiday, he comes obviously from a baseball family. They have plenty of money. There's not like the rush to get something to set your family up long term. He doesn't have to do that. He's in a fortunate position. He can play up to the best of his ability. He can go somewhere he maybe wants to go more than Baltimore if Baltimore's not where he wants to end up. And I think Boris is his agent as well. Uh, and then there's also like the age component of it with a guy like Westberg or Cowser. These were college signs. These were not high schoolers who you are going to get them on the upswing. College players, I think you give them a year, maybe two to adjust, and then it's like this is the best that you're going to be, and we're going to get the absolute best out of you as a 25, 26, 27-year old. And, then somebody else can pay for your age 30, 31 season. That's not going to be us. And that seems to be the Mike Elias perspective. And then Adley Rutschman, you add in the catcher perspective or the catcher of it all. Plus the struggling the last year and a half, it just doesn't make a lot of sense for the Orioles to do that for somebody like Adley Rutschman. So again, that is why I think a guy like Basayo, a guy like Baz maybe gets the deal over these other players. And then to talk about Rogers and Bradish, why haven't they gotten extensions if Baz has? For Rogers, I think it's proximity to free agency at this point. He was so good last year. Sounded like spring went really well for him, had a good start to the year. I think at this point, I mean, he's told the media he's open to an extension. Of course, what's he gonna say? And again, if the Orioles blow him away with some offer, I'm sure he is open to an extension. But you're so close to free agency. If you can string together 2 seasons, I don't expect him to be as good this year as he was in 2025. But even in the same stratosphere this year, he's going to get a huge payout. And of course, at this point, you have to do that for yourself, for anybody else. You have to bet on yourself, I think, and get to free agency and see how it goes. As for Bradish, I think it comes back to an age thing. Kyle Bradish, I think, he's in his age 29 season. I'll confirm that while I'm on here recording with you all, but I believe he's in his age 29 season. He's coming off a major arm injury. Of course, has been good. throughout his career. But yeah, age 29, or no, yeah, this is age 29. He's already 29. He'll be 30 in September. He doesn't become a free agent until after the 2028 season. So he's this year, next year, and the year after. That's 3 years. He'll be 33 when that happens because he'll have turned 33 at the very end of that 2028 season. Um, or I'm sorry, I'm doing my math wrong. He'll be 32 at the end of that 2028 season. Are the Orioles going to pay for his age 32, 33, 34 seasons? That doesn't sound like a Mike Elias thing to do. And on top of that, he's already had some arm stuff. Why would we give him something now when we might get burned on it on the back end? And that's a cruel way to think about professional sports, but it is the way that these teams have to think about the players, unfortunately, to maximize the value out of every dollar they get. And it's unfortunate for Kyle Bradish, who I I view as a real success story of the Mike Elias era, traded from the Angels to the Orioles in the Dylan Bundy deal. I don't know that I would say he was a throw-in in the deal, but when he came in, he was viewed as a relief-only prospect. A prospect still, but a relief sort of middle inning type guy. And the Orioles and Bradish's hard work have turned him into a Cy Young contender already, a crucial piece of a team that has World Series ambitions here in 2026, and a guy that, when healthy, I think is an ace on most staffs in the big leagues and probably half the staffs in baseball. That's a huge success story for Bradish and the hard work he's put in, for Mike Elias and the pitching development staff. And it would hurt to see him go somewhere else in a couple years and play baseball other places, even with the understanding that he'd be doing as a guy in his mid 30s, and probably the best of his days are already behind him at that point. So you can understand, does it make sense for the Orioles to pay him? Probably not, but it's a bummer to see those guys that become favorites and have been in the organization for so long go elsewhere. But that seems to me to be the most likely path for Bradish, and that's why I don't expect him to get an extension with the Orioles. But I'm happy to be proven wrong if that happens. So now, if you look at the Orioles moving forward and who they've got signed up and who they don't have signed up for next year, as far as I can tell, the only players they have signed up are Pete Alonso at $31 million. And these are AAVs, which that I believe is how payrolls are put together, not necessarily the actual salaries the players are making, but AAVs to keep the payroll to judge the payroll tax if there was one. If the Orioles go over it, it's based on AAV rather than actual salary being paid. But correct me in the comments if I'm wrong about that. But Pete Alonso at 31 million, Tyler O'Neill at 16.5. Ryan Helsley has a player option at 14 million. If he pitches well, he's not going to pick that up. He's going to become a free agent. Shane Baz at 13.6 million. Zach Eflin has a mutual option, which again probably not going to happen. And Samuel Basallo at $8.375 million. I'm not sure. Dietrich Enns has an option too, probably a team option for 2.625. Again, pretty much a nominal fee. So maybe he's back next year. But those are the only it looks like seven guys that even have a contract of some point beyond 2026. My guess is Alonso, O'Neill, unless he really falls off and they get rid of him, Boz and Basayo will be back. Who knows about the rest of them? So the Orioles don't have a lot tied up there. And then if you think about the pitchers long term who could be here, it's Bradish through 2028. It's now Boz through 2030. And that's really it. Kramer, I believe, is a free agent. Maybe after this year, maybe after next year, one of those two. So maybe Kramer's around next year. Um, and then it starts to be prospects that are coming up. Trey Gibson's coming up, Luis De Leon coming up. The Orioles are kind of planning for these waves of players to come up and hopefully work out. And I think you need to have ulterior or alternative plans if and when things don't go well, because Rogers is going to be gone. So that makes Bradish and Boz your one and your two. You'd hope Kramer maybe is back up to be a three or a four. Gibson comes up, can do a job there. Maybe you're signing another free agent to be like your five, an Eflin or a Chris Bassett type, and you feel good about that. But then what happens when Kramer goes? What happens when Bradish goes? Baz becomes like that security blanket that maybe by that point Trey Gibson is up and you can give him a long-term deal if you like what you see out of him, or Luis DeLeon, or by that point you may have drafted somebody and they're up. I know Joseph Giroux was really impressive this spring. Maybe he's up and he's doing something for the team. So again, this is the Orioles kind of planning these waves of talent coming in and up and this pipeline and never running out. And I think potentially maybe they thought, um, once Rogers goes and once Bradish goes in 2028, they're not going to have that like holdover to kind of build the rotation around and to kind of have that connective tissue of the old era and the new era. And now Shane Baz can be that guy in 2029 that Trey Gibson can look up to, DeLeon can look up to, any other sort of prospects coming up can look up to be maybe not an ace at that point. Maybe he doesn't get there, but a really solid 2 or 3. He's maybe starting opening day and then handing over the ace title to somebody else as the season goes on. Like you can kind of see how that works out. And the price on it is really not bad. Again, it's that $13.6 million AAV. If he's pitching well, or even like, if he's like a slightly above average starting pitcher, that's really not too bad. And you feel pretty good about it, even if, the actual price tag in 29 and 30 is $21 million and $25 million. Those are a little pricier, but you got the early years a little bit cheaper. And we'll just quickly talk about Baz in his first start of the year. He did start on Sunday against the Twins. Mixed bag of results, but I think some of the numbers you care about were good. His average velocity on the fastball was 97.1 miles per hour, which is just slightly higher than what his average was on the pitch last year. And his whiff rate, they don't have it on Baseball Savant that I see anymore. They have whiff rate by pitch type, but not overall. But I believe 12. It was 12 whiffs on 42 swings, which I think I did it before. Is like a 28% whiff rate. And if you look at his numbers last year, his whiff rate was 25.8% and his average fastball velocity was 97. So the numbers are at the very least sustaining, and if not, maybe a little bit better. And I mentioned earlier how his expected ERA or his FIP was like 2.5 versus his actual ERA right now is going to be, like 6 point something. Yeah, 6.75, but his FIP is 2.28. Again, didn't allow home runs, didn't walk anybody, only struck out 6.8 per nine. Not crazy, but it's one start and the velocity was good. So I think like that's a good sign. Obviously, the Orioles liked what they saw from him in the spring. So I think those are good signs. And, I think these are indications that the Orioles really like what they see with Baz. They view him as like their next sort of project to become something and become a top tier, maybe Cy Young type of pitcher. And the beauty of it is that he doesn't have to be that right now. They can kind of work on him, get him in the lab, and figure some stuff out, because this is sort of a nice season to have a guy like that be your number 3, because you've got such good pitchers at the top in Rogers and Bradish. You've got veteran proven depth in Bassett and Eflin and even Kramer down in AAA for the time being. And then you have some young guys in Gibson and DeLeon that and Brandon Young and Cade Povich, guys that can come up and like do a job if you think Baz needs to like take a breather for a week or skip a start or two. The Orioles are uniquely set up to do that, provided they are winning baseball games and in the playoff picture, because that's also part of this. You can't get, too focused on individual player growth and forget about the overall goals of the team. But I think the 2026 Orioles are in a good spot to handle that. So look, it's an exciting time. It's an exciting move. The Orioles are doing something that they have not done in the Mike Elias era, which is to sign a pitcher to a long-term deal. I think that is a positive thing. Is Shane Baz like the epitome of a no doubt about it ace that you are excited without question to have be on your team for the next 5 years? No, he's got question marks. He's got warts. But I do think it makes all of the offseason moves with the pitching make sense, particularly the Grayson Rodriguez and Shane Baz moves, which is you lost Rodriguez, who had 4 years of team control for Taylor Ward. You got Baz with 3 years, so you downgraded there and you gave up a bunch of prospects. Now Baz is in for an additional year and pitching. And while the top line numbers maybe are not perfect, the peripheral numbers are interesting. And Grayson Rodriguez is on the IL for the Los Angeles Angels. So I think like in this moment at the very end of March here, I think what the Orioles did now makes sense, at least on paper. We have to see if it actually translates to outcomes that you want on the field, long term. And that's not something we'll know this week or this month or maybe even this year. We have to see, a longer term view of it. But I think at the very least, the Orioles have clarified their overall approach to this with Baz. And now we get to see them work and Drew French, do his magic on Shane Baz. And I'm excited. I think talent wise, this is a unique type of pitcher the Orioles haven't really had. And we'll see how it goes. But let me know what you think in the comments. Are you excited by the Baz deal? Do you understand or do you appreciate, them signing Baz over a Rogers or a Bradish? Like, would you rather them go that route, even with the understanding of the difference in cost and age and all of those things? Or do you like the Baz deal? On top of that, who do you want to see the Orioles sign an extension to next that you think is realistic? I personally don't think that a Trevor Rogers extension or even a Gunnar Henderson extension are particularly logical, but that doesn't mean the Orioles can't try their absolute darndest to make it happen. They've obviously already floated out that they talked to Henderson last year. I think they leaked that to John Heyman or somebody did. They talked to him last year and nothing came together. So there are at least like the murmurs of it. But what do you think? Do you think that could happen, or would you like the Orioles see the Orioles maybe pursue somebody else on the roster to lock them up long term? Happy to hear your thoughts in the comments below, or you can also reach out to us on social media, Blue Sky at the Warehouse Pod, or on via email, thewarehousepod@gmail.com. We'd be happy to read it, your comments on the show. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to the show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and elsewhere for the audio version. And we're also on YouTube with video where you can see me kind of click around a little bit. There wasn't too much interesting going on today, but head over there if you like YouTube for consuming your podcasts. We absolutely free. Would love to hit 400 subscribers here soon. Give us a like, share us with the people, and yeah, we'd really appreciate it. But that's all I've got for this episode. Again, my name is Tyler. This has been the Warehouse Podcast, and I will thank you for listening and continuing to listen. See ya.